We have Grammy Award-winning vocalist Kurt Elling, who you've probably seen live streaming from the Green Mill and a porch. We've got his business partner, Bryan Farina, Chicago Jazz Philharmonic founder and artistic director, Orbert Davis, Fulton Street Collective curator, Chris Anderson, HotHouse director, Marguerite Horberg, and Experimental Sound Studios, Olivia Junell. We've also got Studio 5 producer, Steve Rashid. And they're all going to come together tonight under the maestro-esque-ness of Howard Mandel, who is the secretary of the Jazz Institute of Chicago's board. He's also the president of the Jazz Journalists Association. So without further blah, blah, blah from me, I'd like to turn it over to our moderator and our guests. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Heather. Thank you.
Pleasure.
And thanks everybody for coming to view this online chat. The show must go on online. And also thanks to our guests for agreeing to participate tonight. What we want to do is to talk about the presentation decisions that all of these presenters have had to make back in early 2020 when the restrictions on live performances came down, and trying to figure out, well, what do you do next? What do we do next? How are we going to continue to present? So what we want to hear about is how you decided to use online resources, how you focused on what kind of activities would work online. We want to hear about some of the challenges. We want to hear about the successes. And we want to hear about what you've learned and what we may continue to see online, even in the glorious day when live performance in person is available again. So, I'm going to ask first off, who of you were the first presenters to go online? I suspect it was Experimental Sound Studio, but does anybody know?
Do you know
Olivia?
We went on, our first show was March 21st.
What was that show?
So that was the beginning of what is now called the Quarantine Concerts, which was ESS coming together with Ben Billington, Daniel Weish, a couple of different organizers around town to start what we thought at that time would just be a couple of months of giving artists a place to perform in kind of a centralized hub online. We started it because we saw people starting to pop up concerts on their, different musicians starting to pop up concerts on their own on Facebook and different things as things got canceled. And we thought, well, if we can bring all of these people together, they could make a little bit more money, was kind of the goal at the beginning. And then it spun out to being shows every night for most of the year. So,
Wow. Yeah. And who was second then? Kurt, you were just coming into town at that time, weren't you?
We moved back to Chicago from New York in July.
Oh.
So several months after that. And I mean, it's possible that I might have been doing some of the talk, the talk online shows, the cocktail hour shows. So it wasn't really a performance. It was just trying to maintain a connection with the audience and with, people who, wanted to listen up to my crazed and occasionally semi-drunken rantings.
Did that
I think we started those in April.
April? Okay, so yeah, I guess that was pretty early.
Uh-huh.
What was it, Howard?
Did that draw an audience?
Brian, did that draw an audience?
It did, actually. We had roughly 1,000 people listening at any one given time, and that was just talking. So then it lives on Facebook and it builds, and you post about it after the fact, and it's something you can call upon later. It was useful, and people really got a lot out of it.
It was useful. It was useful because it wasn't just me talking, though. It was because we got to the place where we were doing interviews with everybody from Sheila Jordan to Dee Dee Bridgewater to you know, when I got back here to town, we did Dave Gemolo and Neil Tesser and Charlie Hunter, and you know, it was never gonna. I never intended it to be, and it was never going to be successful if it was just going to be me bloviating by myself in a room at the camera.
Well, it seemed to work for Rush Limbaugh, but you've got a lot more intelligence. Was that on your own website? What platform was that on?
Brian, where did we do that?
We just did that on Facebook.
Nice.
Facebook Live.
And that wasn't to monetize anything. We couldn't really figure that out, or chose not to. You know, that was just about keeping a channel open in a crazy time and trying to keep a little bit of sanity on my part, by way of I don't know, being quote Kurt Elling, close quote, as opposed to some guy walking around.
Kurt, did you succeed in the keeping the sanity part?
I'm not entirely sure.
Nobody knows.
Was that a challenge for you, Orbert? Being sane while you were at home to begin with?
Not really. It wasn't, because I just made the decision to stop. You know, I was pretty burnt out even before the pandemic, and it just sort of said, I'm going to stop. You know, and I only did one performance since last. I think I had a performance in February, into February, and I did one of Kurt's porch concerts, and it was really cool. I mean, and we just talked about the broad reach. I made so many friends, Kurt, that night from all over the world. Who's that flugelhorn player? You know, yeah, and you know, it is tough, but you know, as an artist, we do have to sort of feed our audience, and I've been able to do that through the radio show, through The Real Deal, which has been really cool. I found that I play more Chicago artists now, and I'm, you know, every couple of days calling folks just to check how they're doing, and you know, I feel that's kind of the mission until we get back on the stage. But you know, with the orchestra, what can we do? 60 people, you know, we can barely do 2 people on stage.
Yeah.
Well, you're doing a lot of educational events, and let's get back to that in a minute. Let me introduce the others first. Chris, when did you shift to online programming?
Well, our first concert was Katie Ernst and Dustin Lorenzi from their apartment on April 15th. And that was through Facebook Live. And I would host from my apartment. And then we went to, I think we had 1 or 2 a week for the next 2 or 3 weeks. And then the first actual concert inside Fulton Street Collective was Dave Rempis solo saxophone, where it was just me, the sound guy, and Dave, and a visual artist. And that, I believe that was on May 3rd.
Wow.
And ever since then, we just built upon that, where we have the artists and the musicians, sound tech, video tech, and then nobody else in the gallery. That's how we're running it.
Marguerite, it seems like I saw Dave Rempis on one of the early HotHouse Global presentations, right?
Yeah, I would like to give some props to Olivia and ESS, because we sort of followed their lead by going on Twitch and started on April 18th. So yeah, we've had a regular series running all through the last year, and we've shifted a little bit to doing sort of these bigger productions rather than kind of weekly events. But the impetus was the same as other people are mentioning. It was, you know, to put money in the pockets of artists and keep the game afloat.
And your original initiative was to try to open up that Twitch channel to artists and to others who wanted to present. Is that the case?
Well, we're still doing that. I mean, I think we're marrying the idea of arts presenting and activism at that intersection. And so we're trying to, I guess, connect with people globally who are more or less kindred folks in terms of organizing and using culture as a platform for expression and advancing different things that matter to all of us.
Well, you've done fantastically with HotHouse Global in terms of really internationalizing those webcasts.
It's really quite phenomenal. Like, it was beyond our wildest dreams. Our last concert had people watching from Ho Chi Minh City and Kathmandu and Mindanao and Buenos Aires and Saudi Arabia. And it's like, it's opened kind of relationships that when you were in a bricks and mortar kind of structure, you never would have imagined having these audiences. It's really astounding.
Are you talking about the Havana, Chicago concerts doing
You
that?
know, kind of all of them. I mean, we streamed a show from Rajasthan over the summer that was live at 8 o'clock in the morning. And a lot of Tatsu's programs that we've co-presented have been live from Seoul and Tokyo and Taipei. And I mean, some of that stuff is just so exciting because you're in somebody's house in, you know, Korea at 7 o'clock in the morning. And the concert in Rajasthan was in a little patio in the middle of the desert. And stuff like that is just connecting culture in ways that I think at the beginning I never imagined that was part of what we were trying to do.
Steve, let me ask you, I don't know if you've gone international on purpose, but you have been using multimedia to sort of platform. And the thing you've got coming up, this In a Mist, sounds really interesting. Or I guess you've already premiered it.
Yeah, we've been running it for close to a month. My experience mirrors some of what has been said already. We our first online thing was mid-April, I think. At Studio 5, one of our goals from the beginning was to archive the work that was done there and make that available to the artists. So we always do nice video recordings and multi-track audio recordings of any of our shows, and then we share those with the artists, and then we jointly use it for promotion. And then, like Orbert, I have a radio show on WDCB, and we mix the shows from our live shows and put them and broadcast them on the air. I mention all that only to say that when the shutdown happened, I suddenly, like everyone else, was like, you know, what in the world's next? And I realized that I had quite a library of shows that we've been doing the past 4 or 5 years that I had, you know, great fidelity. And so, and my agreement with the artists, I never want to monetize stuff, you know, apart from their things with their approval. So I would approach artists and say, hey, how about if I chop up one of your shows that you did at Studio 5 and we have a live conversation, but then play clips from your shows, since there couldn't be any live shows. So we did that for a couple months and streamed them right from here, from my studio, where I was alone and they were in their house. And then in June, we started doing live streams like what Chris is describing. It was just a musician or a few musicians, few tech, and that was it. I built something behind a paywall. I decided to put it behind a paywall because I was trying to put money in the pockets of musicians and technicians, and rather than just doing it a live stream for free, asking for tips. And I felt that was just the model we chose, and we did that through through about mid-fall, and then now I've changed to something else entirely, which is I created a thing called Into the Mist, which is now it's a full evenings experience. My feeling was that, I don't want to take up too much time here, but I feel that music is always a reflection of a time and a culture, and so I took the Cellar Boys, Chicago Cellar Boys, which is a 1920s group, and I created an online event which kind of takes you through into the world of the 1920s for a while before you actually hear music from them, to kind of give you a sense of that world before you enter them. So it's sort of a choose your own adventure. There are a lot of rooms and hallways, and we've got performers from literally all over the country that are in these different rooms. So you kind of like explore for a while, and then you wind up with a live stream at Studio 5 with the Cellar Boys playing. So that's the current thing.
Is that performance different every time you do it? You're doing it every week, aren't you?
Oh, it's completely interactive. I mean, we've got I've got an artist in New York, contortionist in New York. I've got magicians in Los Angeles, actors in Los Angeles and Chicago. So there are people all over, a guy, an actor in Atlanta. So, and it's all interactive. Everybody's in their own room. So you travel down hallways and you go into rooms and you can, you can interact with these people before you go, and everything's in the period. So you do that before you go hear the music. Just a way of trying to survive and trying to employ people. I mean,
since you've made that so interesting, you may as well tell people how to get tickets for it.
Oh, sure. Intothemist.net. Simple. Show
So,
tomorrow night.
Has the monetization worked for you that way?
Well, it worked until it didn't. I mean, frankly, when we were doing our live streams from Studio 5, that was fine until it became obvious. And I applaud everybody's efforts to just do whatever they can to survive. But by the fall, everybody was doing live streams. A lot of people were doing things from their home, and they were doing things on Facebook and YouTube and doing things for tips, which is fabulous. And I've got great friends that are doing all kinds of stuff like that. And but our model was a cover charge, and after a while, people were, I'd rather see it for free than pay for it. So our audiences frankly started to dwindle by mid-fall, and because we were competing against the world of online presentations. So it stopped being sustainable for us. But I have no regrets. I mean, I think it was, we had a blast while we were doing it. It just sort of stopped making it so that we could justify bringing a lot of people in, and the stress of bringing, 6 or 7 people in a room under these conditions.
So Kurt kind of went the other way, right? When you were doing the porch concerts, those were free and for the community, sort of, weren't they? That was your...
Yeah, I just wanted to have a chance to play and to meet up with any number of other musicians and sing for anybody. I was just losing my mind. And I don't know, Brian, how did we really decide? I mean, Brian, Brian's really the brains behind whether we get stuff paid or whether we do it this way or that way. I mean, I'm just trying to, he's just a godsend to me, because I have a really narrow area of a thing that I can do pretty good. And after that, I'm kind of at a loss. Like, I can't figure out how to get my new computer to sync up with my old phone or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel so fortunate that I've been able to ramp up a thing from from just talking by myself to a camera in my office in New York, to having guests, to playing live gigs again. Started with just my bass player, Clark Summers, and then we added a musician kind of every week, and people started putting out folding chairs on the front lawn, and it was just, it was just so man, it was just a lifesaver to just be able to sing for anybody. And we would limit the number of people on the front lawn there, but by the time we were done, it was maybe 70, 80 people, and chairs out. And, thankfully nobody got sick from it or anything like that, but we had a mess of people up online, and we would just leave it up. What was the big number? We had like
125,000 people watch one of them. And I can't really, for the life of me, figure out how or why. I mean, Kurt from touring for so many years, he's got, kind of a lot of clout over in Europe, a lot of people following him, and that's where a lot of that crowd was. So we did it. What time did we do the shows? Like,
we're doing them like
6 o'clock
in the afternoon, like 3 in the afternoon or something, the golden hour in the summer, so that people could still stay up late in Europe and enjoy it and just, dig it.
And for the porch concerts, we started to put up like a tip jar, PayPal thing, and it worked out. We were able to pay the musicians, and apart from him wanting to, you know, experiment and play with other people, my main goal was to try and get some of my friends who play in his band, you know, some income.
Mhm.
To try and, you know, just to help them all out, because, you know, it was pretty dark there in the beginning until some of the government money started to come out and things like that, and people, you know, they were afraid.
Yeah.
So when Dave Gemolo heard about your success, he thought he'd give Kurt a chance on the stage.
Well-
How did that work out, Brian? When did you decide to go to, you know, the Green Mill?
You know, that you know, Kurt and Dave have a great friendship, and over the last few years I've gotten to know Dave a little bit more, and you know, the joint was closed and we wanted to, you know, Kurt wanted to play at the Mill, so we called a meeting on Dave's back porch. We had some Schlitz and were masked up, you know, 6 feet apart, and just decided to, you know, that we wanted to try something and be partners in a thing. It was really that simple.
Dave really didn't, I had texted him a couple of times, hey man, look at what's happening in the world. You should set something up and get some of your cats in there and you can make some dough. And he's like, I just want to reopen. I'm like, yeah, but dude, I said, okay, keep it in your back pocket. I'll be there by July. If you want to do something, then we'll get a thing. He says, da-da-da. Then July comes, August, September. Then I have him over to my house for one of the porch concerts. And he's like, hey, this is actually kind of, I can understand what this could be. And then when we had our, you know, meeting, you know, it was like, he's like, well, how is this really going to work? And it was, as soon as he understood that we were kind of take care of business, and that Brian was going to deal with the cameras and the internet stuff, and you know, I'd come in with the boys and we'd be ready to roll, then he was like, okay, let's give this a shot. I mean, we didn't really make nearly the kind of money that we were hoping to, but again, we were working and we were being creative and we were continuing our connection with the audience. And we would do sometimes an afternoon show for Europe and then an evening show for US people and whatever. But I'm kind of jealous of Marguerite's thing, because I mean, being able to pull in people from all over the world like that, that's really the best of what the internet's for. That's really like the beautiful, heart-stopping opportunity that the internet is like. That's what God really intended from the internet, not everything else that's come of it.
Well, I just want to kind of piggyback on what you guys are talking about. You know, I talk to a lot of presenters around the country. We have a weekly call and everyone's trying to figure out what the plans are, when to reopen, and contracts and force majeure. You know, there's a lot of chatter about, you know, integrity of presenting. And I think some of the things people are agreeing to is paying artists. You know, this has become a real point of principle, as well as people are changing a lot of the terminology. People don't want to talk about talent buying. That's come up as something that people want to change. So a lot of the talk is really the opening that's been created with kind of equalizing the presenting field and looking at players like Clear Channel and Live Nation and resetting the stage. So I think those are really interesting questions for all of us. Kind of going to, you know, talking about pay models and monetization. We took the position early on, partially because I'm too, you know, I'm doing everything. So to grapple with paywalls and pay-per-view just seemed not worth it. And the other part is, you know, wanting to make things free, because we knew people were hurting economically. And so not making people choose between, you know, $5 for this or that was sort of a point of principle. But, you know, talking also about this worldwide audience, thinking about monetization, people have such unequal payment, possibilities. Like, not everyone has PayPal or ways to pay online, especially if people are watching in Saudi Arabia or Pakistan. I mean, it's a very unequal, situation to think about monetization. So kind of for all those reasons, we've just kept it free. And we found that donations, by and large, sort of supersede what a ticket structure, would
Yeah.
look like.
Chris, you've got a $10 ticket charge on Fulton Street Collective? No?
Nope, it's everything's an online tip jar. So we've had, I went back and forth on that at the very beginning on whether to do Twitch or Zoom and have a paid online ticket. I just wanted to make everything, like everybody's kind of collectively said earlier, to make everything accessible and get income in musician and artist pocket. And so we just, the shows are free, but I really, before show, when I do the intro, at break and at the end of the show, I really try to push the tip jar. And it's the musicians, Zelle, Venmo, PayPal account, the artists, and then if people are so inclined can also donate to Fulton Street Collective so we can keep doing these performances. But it really was, and it was also, I was trying to get out of a little bit of red tape where I was talking to other venues that have been doing live stream about people calling in saying they can't get the stream, they want their money back, and yada, yada, yada. And I just, the way we have it set up just now, going straight directly from OBS to our YouTube channel makes everything easy. And we have a small little online tip jar window, and people can give we've had people give $5, we've had people give $500. So it's working.
Orbert, your situation is a little different because of the educational element. So I guess I don't quite understand how it works. Will you go into it a little bit?
Well, first of all, I think it's just having the mindset to switch and making education a priority. I actually founded 2 education platforms, one of which is, of course, Chicago Jazz Philharmonic's education program. And we had a very successful online summer camp. Last July, it was a week long. We had about 60 students, 20 students from Cuba, which is pretty cool, having them involved. And the positive is it made us a national camp because I could reach out to friends from all over the country. And we had John Faddis, who was hanging out with his in-laws. And we had musicians from California, Texas, pretty much all over, who were presenting. And if we were live in Chicago, we could only have who was available in Chicago at that time. And
So these were, I'm sorry, so this was funded or working through CPS or what?
No, funded. It's funded, and maybe I would say 90% of the students are on scholarship. So we pretty much give it away. But it's, yeah.
Is that material posted afterwards for general access or no?
No, it's pretty much the event. And again, we had like interviews. We interviewed Timuel Black and instrument maker in California, Franklin, I can't remember his last name. I was gonna say Franklin Roosevelt, but that's one of the Peanuts, right? No. Anyway, Franklin Vanderbilt. He plays with Lenny Kravitz. He's a former student from Chicago. It was pretty cool. And Howard Levy did some amazing tricks on piano, but it's more the platform of presenting interviews and workshops. But we also do we've sort of mastered a way to have online ensembles. Dr. Roosevelt Griffin is our ensemble director. He basically has the kids learn their own parts, and they'll record them headphones into whatever program he uses, and we'll mix that, and they'll have a virtual band. It turns out pretty good. So I think the experience and even the follow-up that we got was pretty cool. Yeah, the other side, our other company is actually more deeply involved in education. So we aggressively moved into the online platform. And actually we've created curriculum that will continue on an online platform. But we have,
because of the outreach that you can get that way? Or?
well, because kids aren't in school and the fact that they're home and we have to reach them. We did have, we reach about maybe 1,600 students. That's probably, at a given week. And we had a drop maybe 50% at first, because kids just weren't coming in. When you think of just what's going on with CPS and just the mess of kids even going online, it's challenging. But we've adopted the platform which is scientifically proven that if a child is they miss a year of in-person learning, they're going to be 2 years behind in their actual learning. So we're developing programs that address those issues.
For all of you, do you find that the audience is searching you out? They're looking for something to watch and they're coming to you and saying, "We want to see our artists." And it's funny to hear Orbert talking about the students not showing up when the adults are like trying to find something to divert themselves with. Olivia, you got like some of the most niche of the music audience here, although everybody has their own niche.
We're all niche.
Yeah. How do people find ESS being online?
I think one of the things that we did from the beginning that ended up working really well was that all of our virtual concerts are a curator model. So with a very few exceptions, we have curators all over the world who are curating each of the shows each night. And so it reached out to their networks and their artist networks. And so, and Marguerite was talking about this. With these virtual shows, a real upside is that you're able to put together these dream, almost impossible lineups sometimes with people from all over the world. And so, we were looking at who we had attracted over the past year, and it's like, our venue holds 30 people, 40 if we have like solo violin or something, it's like you're really in there. And so and it's on the north side of the city, it's a niche place in addition to having niche music. And so it's been incredible to be able to reach all of these people, and it's just networks and networks and networks and trying to expand all of that out and out. And I think thinking, and I hope that Marguerite will talk more about this, I think that also connecting with other networks, but also I think what HotHouse has been really successful in is connecting with other issues. And so kind of connecting to a larger issues that we might often think of as being outside of the arts. And so kind of really thinking big and thinking globally, which is what this space allows. I think there's huge potential still moving forward to keep tapping into these kind of global networks or unconventional, Marguerite, you mentioned Clear Channel or something. It's like, we normally, in anything like that, we would never have any association with, and there's just not opportunity for some of these larger corporate things, but maybe now there is, where it is mutually beneficial, or could feed the scene and our artists in an interesting way. Clear Channel might be a bad example, but.
I thought Marguerite was saying that she's trying to level the playing field, so HotHouse.
Well, I think that's what.
Yeah, we're all on the same. We're in the same box now. We're all in this box together.
I think there's a lot of related issues that I don't think we'll have time to get into about. I think we're at a moment when corporate interest and corporate record labels are seeing the work that's been done in the last year and, trying to figure out how they can monetize it and sort of usurp some of the space that we've been able to create as artists, citizen, activist presenters, and making the entry for presenting more expensive through, sync licensing stuff. But I think what I was saying is that, you know, some of our colleagues, you know, when you're soliciting touring artists, who, you know, in bigger markets, you're oftentimes kind of competing with bigger festivals and bigger, you know, brokers. And so what I think what I was saying is that some of that is being reset at this moment with all venues closing.
We
And
just
so-
briefly talk about what the sync license is. Somebody else asked about that in the chat. I don't quite understand what that is. Can you
I
just-
could briefly say, but maybe Steve or someone knows more about it. But, you know, any content that's online is subject to copyright, and digital copyrights previously weren't so important, but now, as I mentioned, I think other players are coming in the market. And so what, you know, things like clearing, licensing for online streaming is becoming, you know, sort of a middleman business where people are, you know, charging money to clear licensing. And so for smaller people, smaller like ESS and Chris and I, you know, that's like another budget expense, the cost of online presenting.
What are you clearing? Are you clearing performance rights for compositions and stuff? Or?
Publishing rights.
But a lot of your music and ESS is original material. I would think that would hamper Kurt more than anybody, or Chris, if you're doing the Jazz Art Record Collective and re-performing a classic album. Does it affect original music in a negative way on you too?
I'll let other people respond if they have experience. I mean, I could say more about it, but maybe someone here has more to say.
If you're only streaming, or if you're putting something up on Facebook or YouTube, they pay already. So they, you know, they handle it for you. But like, so you do a show at a venue, you stream it, that's one license. If it's a live performance, you can get that covered with your performing, with your ASCAP BMI blanket license kind of a thing. And then if you go to play it back later or have people watch on demand, that's when sync licensing comes into play. And then the thing about it is that there's no set rate. So you have to find, until some of these middle companies started to come out and provide the service, you had to go directly to the publisher and they could do whatever they want.
It might be a little technical for this conversation, but, you know, I think the point is that there's sort of, I think, new people seeing, you know, that online concert streaming is lucrative when they weren't paying attention before.
Yeah, they're coming. They're coming for their money.
I'll tell you something on the obverse end of cats here on the checkerboard or chessboard here, being able to reach out to the world and connect and have bands perform from the desert and everything like that. The opposite side of that is, and that I've been hoping for, by performing at the Mill, and we're trying to work out some other venues in Chicago where we can perform, because one of the ways that I can use my little platform, and that I want to use it, is to showcase, you know, the Chicago scene and the Chicago venues, so that it's not just me doing my thing, but that it's like, hey, you need to come to Chicago when all this opens up. You need to make the scene at the Mill. You need to make the scene at the Jazz Showcase. You need, you know, so we're starting to try to spread it around. And it was another reason why I wanted to have other musicians from the Chicago scene who could carry their weight when it came to an online audience, and justify the upfront expense, the 5 cameras, the computer stuff, the whatever, to get it to happen, so that we could have an online showcase for the larger Chicago scene, as a magnet to draw people here and their eyes on to the Chicago situation, which I think is a perfect complement. I mean, I hope it is to the stuff that Marguerite and Olivia are doing by reaching out and getting stuff to happen that way.
So this is one of my pet, I don't know what. It seems to me that WTTW has a great unused, has a soundstage where people could be performing there with professional cameras, and then that could either be on WTTW during the day for educational content, or like you're saying, Kurt, streamed to the world as showcasing the best of Chicago. And one of the things that I find so frustrating is that we're always kind of trying to solve things with little resources and little staff. And, it would be really great if we could use some of these things that, taxpayers have funded to be in this moment. Like, why couldn't Orbert have his programs from there in the daytime on Channel 11? I mean, that would be a win-win for everybody whose kids are at home. So anyway, I mean, I think problem solving collectively is always, a great thing to do.
That's good thinking, Marguerite.
Yeah. Since you bring that up, though, the Chicago scene, and Kurt, you've been at Epiphany also, right? You've
been at Epiphany, yeah.
Yeah. But, so when we were putting this discussion together, Heather said, well, who's going to represent the South Side here? And I thought, well, I don't know how much activity there is on the South Side. Logan Center's closed. The places in Hyde Park.
Well, Promontory's been doing like DJ sets and stuff like that. It's been really cool.
Yeah. But, Orbert, what about the Beverly Arts Center? Do they have interest in putting something up and getting going? Or are there venues on the South Side that we're just not aware of that are also investing in this sort of activity?
I live minutes from the Beverly Arts Center and I have no idea.
I would say that means no.
Yeah.
But I just saw WVON announce a TV show.
That's going to be like a live streaming event, or
it looked like it.
Interesting. Did they have a channel? I didn't even know that.
As usual, I remember half the details.
Yeah, okay. We'll have to check that out. But, the idea of flattening the field a little bit, I mean, this is also, several of you have mentioned that in the early days last year, it was musicians themselves going on, however they could, to broadcast, to webcast. And but except for Kurt, and you all represent organizations that these musicians are working with now. So did the musicians just say, we don't want to do this, we'd rather have the institution do it? Or you guys the institutions have the equipment and the promotional background? I mean, where does that stand right now? This afternoon I watched Chris, a show you had with Isaiah Collier and Isaiah Spencer doing the Coltrane. What's that album called?
Both Directions.
Yeah, Both Directions at Once. And now they had done some live streaming themselves, right? Before, early on in the spring.
Well, I think a lot of musicians did whatever they could at first. And luckily, I don't know if you want to say luckily, but we was fortunate enough when we started to get into the thick of this, that we were approaching April, May, and June, where musicians could perform outside. And there was a lot of online or lawn concerts and street concerts and people just performing in porch concerts. And they kept on going and going and going. And so I think I would hope that those will be coming back in 2 or 3 months, because I don't see us really, I don't want to be Mr. Downer here, but I don't see us getting out of this for quite some time. So I think what you will see are the bands like Bonzo Squad, and they're performing on Corbin Andrick's porch, and Pan Dulce, and on and on and on down the line. So I think that it's wise for as a proprietor to expect that and help push it, because that's going to hopefully drive more traffic to the scene, to the medium, and will shine a brighter light on what's going on in the Chicago music scene.
Will you take performances to outdoor situations instead of having them at Fulton Street Collective? Do it in a...
I would like to. We were actually going to do Joel Bear. We were going to do his orchestra in our parking lot, and we came down to we were going to just do 2 songs because I knew we'd probably get shut down because we were going to do it under the sly. And we had it organized where everybody was going to park on the street, and then I give the signal, and everybody run, set up, play a few songs, break down, and get lost, just to see if we could do it. And then at the end, like, this is really a bad idea. It's a good idea.
Good idea. Good idea. Let's try that.
It's a good idea.
Everybody wants to see this.
So, yeah. So.
But on that point, I think this one of the challenges is, maybe Orbert can speak to this, but people sort of had the equipment that they had in their house, more or less. And so the question of like playing with your band that's not in your house, and how to resolve the latency questions, and, you know, making it sound like a robust group, you know, is still, I think, a technical thing to surmount. And, you know, a lot of musicians we've talked to have said kind of what Orbert said, that they've welcomed this to some extent, in the sense that they weren't touring all the time, and they got to take some time to, you know, be at home with their family and work on new compositions and other kinds of things that they weren't able to do when they were kind of out and about all the time. But yeah, I think the music making as a group online is still a tough thing to figure out.
Very.
You know, in this regard, I'm interested in what Steve has done or is doing with this In a Mist production. I mean, this seems sort of the other way. It's almost like you've created, it sounds like, Steve, a Broadway show or something like that.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I would categorize it exactly like that, but I did. It was really a thought of, I went into this period of what if, more or less, just trying to figure out, well, what if I could gather? I mean, there are advantages to the medium and real disadvantages to the medium, and we're talking about some of the disadvantages. I mean, you can't get people to perform together from a distance. I mean, yeah, that it is kind of possible with, you know, correct coding and all that stuff. You can work it out so that people within 50 miles of each other can perform together with, you know, negligible latency. You know, there's all that, but it's a lot of work, and ultimately, I don't know that it's worth it. But I was thinking, gosh, if I could get people that could interact and have set up one wall behind them and make that like a set piece, and they could do their thing there. If I could get a bunch of individuals like that, it could have a feeling of a show. And I'd like to cycle back for a second. I mean, the people have been talking about all these really important and great thoughts, and one that keeps coming back to me was that I think from the beginning, at least for us, and I feel it from you guys too, what I really felt was a loss of community, and that was community that we were reaching with our audiences, community of musicians, community of fellow artists. All that just kind of like crumbled in front of us, and we were grasping at how to get it back together. And so our initial efforts to do stuff online I have to admit, had much less to do with what the music was than how can we gather these people that have been loyal patrons of what we do? How can we gather them together and make them feel like they still matter? They still matter to us, and we wanted to reach them somehow. And that's what truly all of our efforts have been about, really just about connecting with people and finding ways to do that. So the Into the Mist was really just another effort to like, how can, I had a lot of people. I grew up in a family of artists, and so I've been involved in theater and television and film stuff for a long time. So I reached out to people that I know in these other areas of the arts, and literally everybody said yes when I said, would you like to get involved with this? Because it was just something to do where they could connect, and it became sort of like this thing as a collective. It worked. It was a lot of back end internet stuff, website stuff, but it feels like you're actually kind of in a home, and you're going in and out of rooms, meeting people. It's
like is it like gaming kind of?
There is a game element to it. There's one secret room that you can't find unless I'm kind of giving it away, but we don't tell anybody about it. And if you play blackjack against the dealer and beat the house, you get the password to the secret room and directions to it. A couple other ways to get. So there is, and our hope is that you get lost in the experience, but not in the technology. That's been sort of my mantra to the whole thing. So we try to make it as much as user-friendly as possible, but in a way that you can get turned around and not know where you are.
Well, this interactive element is what I've been missing from watching live stream performances.
Yeah.
And the sense of community that I would take for granted going into a venue and sitting with other people, and when everybody in the room is experiencing the same music, and there's sometimes deep and sometimes very superficial sense of communion in that. And I'm interested in this interactive element. Mm-hmm. That seems to be the real stumbling block. How do we get people to feel that this is really happening for them, with them?
Can I tell just a brief story
Please.
About relative to Into the Mist? We set it up so that many of these rooms are interactive. Where you're going in and out, like I was saying, going in and out of rooms, and you're in a group, but different people are getting called out, and you're actually having interactions with the people in the room. So it feels very much like we're all in this together. It culminates in everybody going to a live stream from Studio 5 of the band. Initially, I just had that, it's a live stream. We're all just going to sit there and watch it. And there's we put a chat bot in there, people could chat and communicate that way. But after the final dress rehearsal, one of the guys says, it would be entirely poetic if you got to see everybody else at that moment. So in the 11th hour, we shifted the whole thing so that final room, instead of being just a live stream, was actually like this, Zoom. So when you go to Studio 5, you're seeing the club, but you're seeing 200 people, faces of these are all the people that were crawling through the website with you that you didn't, there's so-and-so, my friend was here, and then somebody's dancing, someone else dressed up for the occasion. People are, chatting with each other. Suddenly, the opening night, we had cast members that were reduced to tears because they were like, oh my God, this is like live theater now. And that was completely unplanned. I have to say, I would love to take credit for that, but it was like, wow, we hadn't thought that was going to be powerful in that way.
So are the interactions like on Zoom, these kinds of conversation that we're having?
Yeah, it goes, it moves, it's largely browser based. So you're in Chrome or Safari or Firefox, whatever you use, and you're kind of manipulating your way through this. But if you go into a room that's interactive, it pulls you out of that and takes you to Zoom. And then you're in Zoom. And then when you come out of Zoom, you're back in your browser and then you're moving around. So if it's an interactive room, you go to Zoom and back out. And we chose that simply because everybody knows Zoom. We tried, that was a week I'll never get back. We tried every other platform we could to try to make it something that wasn't clumsy. Zoom is clumsy in its way, but it was the one thing that everybody understood and knew how to do. So we thought, all right, we'll do that.
I gotta say, Steve, that's some technological bravery right there.
I sweat every night.
even just to get a handful of automated cameras set up in the right way and lighting, and to make sure that the internet signal didn't go down seemed like to me a big enough challenge. And to be having all these different rooms and then move to Zoom and come back and show people stuff, that's insanity, dude. I bow to you. That's great.
Yeah, well, you should talk to my wife sometime.
Well, maybe you could get Kurt to play Misty for me.
There you go.
As your opening intro song.
There you go.
But Kurt, when you were doing the interviews, didn't you find that the contextualization helped to bind people to the experience more? Right?
Well, sure, and they were typing stuff in, but I mean, talk about a skeleton staff. I mean, it was just me and Bryan having to talk me through stuff I didn't understand. And then when we had like a Sheila Jordan on, you know, here's a 92-year-old gal who's as bright as they come, but you still got to figure out how you're going to talk her through how to get on a Zoom. This was when Zoom was just still, you know, fresh out of the box or whatever. And I still haven't been in a situation, like, I don't understand how these cats can do things creatively, be talking, and then see a chat thing pop up and respond to it and say, oh, hey man, this and this and this is happening. I see your comment there for sure. Like I'm doing a show. So I have to imagine that people are there. And then if we do it on, so for instance, we're on mandolin.com for our paid shows, which to, you know, this gets us back to Steve's issue. You know, we're doing ticketed events now, and we're doing great with them. Thank God. We're not getting rich or anything, but everybody gets a taste and it's mellow and we feel good about it. But I never get to see the comments or even who showed up, because this stuff disappears once the show is over. So now I'm even more removed from what the thing was, because usually I'm just looking at the camera or my phone or whatever. It's not big enough. I can't see. And even if I could, like I say, what I'm going to do, stop the song and say, right on, Sally from Oklahoma or whatever, you know, I mean, I'm always happy. And I try to go through and respond to people, because as with Marguerite's thing, people watching from all over the world, people staying up all night in Japan to watch a show. I mean, they deserve some attention from me when that stuff's over, just out of respect.
That's a great point, actually. I think when people get recognized, they really appreciate it.
But I can't do it during the show. I gotta quit afterwards.
Exactly. It is so difficult. It is so difficult, but it makes it, people really respond to it.
A lot of our stuff is pre-recorded, so you know the idea is you could chat because it's what's being broadcast has happened already.
I thought you weren't supposed to talk when there's music going on.
I know that is a thing.
I want to ask Orbert about this though, the interaction on the educational level. When you've got a class of students, are they interactive, or is everybody supposed to be just absorbing it?
No, it's extremely interactive. Yeah, we for camp we had about maybe 4 or 5 different producers and teams working at the same time to make sure it happened. And I'll honestly say that there's 4 of you in this room that I've learned from since last year, and starting with Steve, what we did when you broadcast the performance with John Mulder. I mean, I was taking notes, man, how you made that happen. And then Kurt and Bryan, that was absolutely ridiculous, using cell phones and little bitty lights and, you know, broadcasting to the world. And I was, you know, I stayed up almost that whole night because, you know, I'm kind of I like marketing, and, you know, if there's some trumpet player in Taiwan who's digging me, I want to say, hey man, how you doing? You know, and those things are important. And then Marguerite, we did we opened up your Cuba concert, the Havana, the first concert. And yeah, it maybe there should be a forum, and I think maybe Jazz Institute can lead that way, where there's a hub where people can kind of learn these things. We, again, talking about our camp, it was literally Saturday when we figured out that we can get these 20 kids from Cuba. Most of them were from Matanzas, with very poor internet, and they had just opened up from the restrictions, and kids were literally traveling 10, 15 miles to get to the school so they can watch a TV and soak in the information, and then the internet will go out like 5 or 6 times in an hour, you know. But I just heard from their maestro, the school's director, who said that they learned so much stuff in that week, and just the opportunity to, you know, communicate with America was huge. But it was a circus. My daughter is very fluent in Spanish. She was upstairs in her bedroom, so she's the one communicating and saying things, and Then we had 3 or 4 guys who were, either on Zoom or on what's the other one? StreamYard. And we had all the and Messenger. All these things were going live and somehow connecting. How we did it, I don't know, but I think that's something that if we can find a standard where it can happen, I think that would help. And again, I think we're going to be here in this position, as I said earlier, for a while. And one thing I like to even talk about, even coming up, is I don't know. I guess I'm being selfish. I haven't been one to actually really push to get out and play. I mean, and partly because I fit in 3 of the categories of being careful, in terms of COVID, health, race, and pre-existing condition. So I really do want to get out. And Kurt knows, man, I was masked up that night, man.
You were awesome, dude. You made that whole thing happen. You put the absolute pinnacle peak on the top of the Himalayas with that performance, Dan. Everybody.
I had a friend make a mask that I could cover everything and just stick a trumpet mouthpiece in. It's insane. But
you look like you were straight out of that movie Amadeus, with a big mask on in the front. The big.
That's right. But the thing is, and when is it going to be over? And we had something even planned to work with Steve, and that was going to be in April. We got to push it back because it is a time, and I'm finding that more and more of my colleagues, COVID is getting closer and closer. People are, and they're successful, thank God, they're surviving, but it's I don't want to go through that stuff.
Yeah.
Chris, are you finding it that COVID is reaching the musicians that in your circle, in the Fulton Street Collective circle?
We've been extremely cautious, and we're fortunate enough to have a 2,000 square foot space with 30-foot ceilings and 4 10-foot windows. So we take every precaution. The good thing about working with jazz musicians is 99.9% of them take it just as seriously as I do. So I have not had too much interaction with any musicians who have gotten it. I know a few who got it quite early in even January and not know what they had gotten. But for us, it's just so important to honor the musician's request to stay safe. And so everybody's masked up, the windows are open, tornado fans going. We're spread out. We've had a few shows where we're operating the sound booth, the soundboard in the foyer. So I guess I kind of gave you a long answer to yes, but I think it's just really important to put people before profits in this situation. And so that's something that we've really built an identity and a platform on, is to take every precaution and take this very seriously, because it is very serious.
Are you, and Olivia, this applies to the ESS also, are you receiving what is it, PPE funds, or any government support for the venues?
Yeah, we got the PPP, and then also there were a number of NEA, National Endowment for the Arts. There's statewide, citywide. There were a number of good relief efforts in there ongoing, which were really useful to us as a nonprofit. I think it's a much more, and also experimental sound studio, as Howard mentioned earlier, we're in a niche spot, so we never really were dependent on ticket sales. So that's just not part of our model. And so yeah, it was it hasn't been an easy year, but it has been a possible year, and a year where we could really dream about things and support the artists. And also, Steve, I appreciated mentioning the technicians, which is a huge group of people that I think a lot of people don't think about, all of the gig engineers and technicians working in Chicago who have been left without work. But I imagine it's much harder, or I don't know, I know it's much harder for venues who are really dependent on stuff. And, you know, as nonprofit, you know, they may not be nonprofits, so they don't have as much access to this grant funding. And that's a gap that I feel like people have got to figure out. Also, because, and this was something I was thinking about earlier, at the very beginning of our conversation, and I would be interested to hear, to circle back to this part of the conversation at some point with everyone here. You know, what are the models going to be for getting people paid? Because the internet is sort of free by design. So how do we've been lucky in donations. We played around with the idea of a paywall, but Steve, kind of like you, we did notice that there was, even in the donations, some tapering come fall, where people are getting fatigued. And so what will the financial model be moving forward?
I know, I wonder the same thing. I mean, even though we had a paywall on our end, intentionally, we made it a very small amount. I mean, the first things we did were $5.
Yeah.
So, and the idea was not, we wanted to make it a low price so that most anybody could afford it. But we wanted to have a little bit of a sense of exclusivity to it, so that it wouldn't be just something you'd click on for 5 seconds and then move on, you know, so that it would be something you paid for, so you're going to commit to, like going to a club. That's that was our model. If I had to do it over again, I don't know if I would go the same route, because I ultimately, you know, our crowds were you know, relatively small compared to a lot of folks who were doing things for tips, and then they would do fine in the tips. But the fatigue is a real thing, and you know, I don't know. We are going to be at this for a while, and I just think, you know, got to come up with something else to give people.
Well, Bryan, Kurt says that you're the financial brain here. So what do you project?
Well, you know, it's, I think when it all started, you know, people were trying to give things away too fast, and you know, because we didn't know, we still don't know how long it's going to last, but we thought it was, you know, okay, by the summer we might be able to keep it rolling. So people are just trying to pass the time and keep engaged. And now, you know, it needs to really catch up, help a lot of people catch up with their bills. And you know, I mean, in Kurt's case, you know, I'd plan on trying to do a show a month, you know, a ticketed show a month, to just keep it going. You know, you know, he's coming to the end of the book, perhaps. So, you know, we have to like figure out ways to get more creative and things like that. But, you know, I think, you know, we're going to have to keep going, and we're going to have to do this even when we are back, you know, for sure. But some people have lower ticket prices. I actually decided that you know, that it was more valuable, the content's more valuable, and that I actually raised the prices.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen, there hasn't been any decline. And it wasn't like, you know, an astronomical price range, but you know, like a $15 ticket is really hard. It's hard for anyone to make any money to keep it going. If the object is to keep it going, $15 is really difficult, you know, especially if you're not getting funding from a source.
If you're trying to get an actual profit out of an online event, you really need to price it at a spot to do it.
I saw the Logan UFC Presents, their Maritza ticket was $40. So they obviously know that they have an audience for a pretty big ticket. I mean, one thing I think is a path forward is to sort of consolidate and create sort of special events with like-minded presenters. I mean, I think there's some some ways to pool marketing dollars, to hire publicists, to do social media. So that's sort of what I'm more interested in, is like, working with the SS and Elastic and Chris, and maybe just finding a niche on online that says, we care about boutique productions and quality music, and you're going to find people that you wouldn't hear elsewhere. And and I think the other part of the weariness, I'm really glad Olivia talked about the back end folks, because we have to pay them, and I think pooling those those people who have those talents would be really helpful as well, because people who know how to do this well, I don't know how many people there are, but we want the people who really understand audio quality and production details, and know that the artists we're presenting, we really care about, as we have in live productions, we care about the sound quality, we care about, what's being transmitted. So we want a cadre of people who, but also, like, I think this is an opportunity to bring in disenfranchised young people, like, people without work. They could be trained in this new world of presenting. This is an opportunity to broaden what sound engineers look like, away from only white guys with pot bellies, no offense. But, like, this is a way to bring youth into the picture and do some employment training and stuff like that.
We gotta do it. Yeah.
Women.
Well,
women
I came into I honestly, I came into this whole scene with a technical background. Before I was working in a management capacity, I was a tour manager and a front of house engineer, and I had a broadcasting degree in college. So, the pandemic happened. I've been doing this tech stuff the whole way through. I got a government loan. I bought the equipment that it would take to put on these shows. So
Yeah.
I want to make it work, and now, I've had over the last 8-10 years experience marketing, and I would say that the pandemic has actually helped me hone in a little bit better on the whole internet marketing thing. So,
well, you had that whole idea, you had that whole scheme of how we were partnering with different clubs, all around the world in different
right.
venues.
Yeah, we contacted all of our favorite venues from London, Holland, radio stations all over the place, the Melbourne Jazz Festival in Australia, and we gave them a special link, and it was like, well, you have a financial stake in this too,
Mm-hmm.
So however many tickets you sell, we'll pay you a percentage of that, and we, it did pretty well, but not, I thought it was going to do better, but at least it we were trying, it was trying to give back.
Well, it's definitely the right idea on every front, because you're trying to get your thing out to the widest possible audience, and you're trying to do it by way of providing a benefit to partners and friends that you've made in person around the world in years gone by. And now you're all in on the project together, which is the kind of stuff Marguerite is talking about.
Yeah.
Let me ask Orbert, with the student groups that you're addressing, are you finding any interest from students in getting into the kinds of tech roles that Marguerite was talking about? Are people like saying, wow, that's incredible, we're dealing with the Cubans, I wonder how I could work to improve this internet connection and stuff like this? Are kids interested?
Not necessarily, because most of our kids are elementary age. We have a few high school kids.
Never too young.
Yeah, but we did start a kind of a student council within the Chicago Jazz Philharmonic, which a few of our older kids are being mentored by musicians and our like engineers, just to learn more, to take this opportunity. I'm even finding it interesting that I'm spending a lot of time just learning the techno stuff in my space and bringing my sons in, you know, to hang out with Logic and GarageBand and just, you know, mixing video and things like that. But Marguerite's correct. That's something that in their minds, I mean, we just finished a video this afternoon and my son's just like, he knows what, he's 11, he knows way much more than I do. I'm like, okay, let me try the Ken Burns effect. It's like, Dad, get out of the way, I got this.
Let me ask you something else. Marguerite, you mentioned publicists, and I'm doing another Zoom conversation with journalists on Sunday, also talking about coverage of live streaming and online events. And we have an editor from the Seattle Times. We have a publicist, Ann Braithwaite from Boston, talking about this. We have a venue owner from Ondai Music in Baltimore. And the journalists, though, we have found that we are not able to really cover online materials. Nobody's buying those articles from us. We're not reviewing online shows. And of course, reviewing live concerts has diminished a lot in the last few years, the last 25 years anyway. There doesn't, so do we need publicists? Do we need journalists? Or can we just, like, because we're online, you just go directly to that audience that you've nurtured, that you've collected so long? Did you get coverage for, I know we talked about, you and I talked about.
Yeah, we were in the New York Times with the HotHouse Meets Havana. That was a big thrill for me. But, you know, Howard, you know, the people in Chicago haven't done anything. It's really quite stunning. Like, you know, I had to write to the New City and say, hey man, I bought $400,000 worth of ads when I had a club. Could you mention one of our programs? And they're like, we don't do events. We don't cover events. So, you know, I think there's many stories, as you know, Howard. It's like how you tease out the story. Our conversation tonight is, you know, it's interesting. Like, how are people doing this? That's a story. You know, how is Kurt moving back to Chicago and finding 80 people on his porch? I mean, that's a story.
I find it a story, but I'm not finding my editors find it a story.
Well,
you know, that's the problem. I mean, I think that Steve, you should get In the Mist covered. That would be a theater thing. Boy, I would be surprised if the Tribune wouldn't review that.
Your lips to God's ears.
I've got that direct contact, man.
But I don't really think there's much news outlets anyway. You know, I mean, you know that. I mean, there's not much. The Tribune's pretty much gone, and
Tribune's gone. But the Reader is doing stuff that's pretty good.
Yeah, the Reader's great. Let's support the Reader.
Somebody is asking me, they're not seeing a big commitment from DCASE. Should they be the collective leadership in online streaming? This is the year of Chicago music. No, okay.
Don't get me started. It's like a joke. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go there. You know, they could have this thing like with WTTW, this thing with everybody learning at home. The city could have played a role galvanizing the cultural educational community to work with CPS, to work with teachers, to work with artists. But, you know, the problem in the city is there's nobody who wants to play a galvanizing force. Everyone's, you know, every foundation, they don't collectivize the foundation work. They don't collectivize grants. They don't collectivize the community. There's no organizing. And it's such an individualist world that we live in, and we all suffer for it. And it's crazy. It's crazy. And, you know, the city they have money, they have resources, they have staff. They should be doing something.
I feel like I want to say this is, it's been such an interesting time because I feel like these situations are very apparent now. it feels very transparent. Like who is Marguerite is the person who has kept reaching out to us to try to get everyone together. It's the small organizations and the individuals and people who are working, you know, really like on the ground, who have the fewest resources, who are getting everyone together and who are trying to work collectively. And that's how it's always been, but you can really see it now. You can really, I feel like you can see how much the people who do have all the resources and power could be doing and are maybe not doing. And I feel like the impact that HotHouse and everyone on this panel has had in the past year is because we've worked collectively and we've reached out to our networks and we know how to do that, and that's how we work. And we've had a huge impact.
Olivia, can I put you on the spot about the Hyde Park Jazz Festival also?
Sure, yeah.
So what position do you see them being in all this system?
I think in the Hyde Park Jazz Festival is an interesting one, going back to your question about the South Side, Howard, where we kind of went into a hybrid for our summer programming, where we did live or like in-person pop-up programs throughout the South Side that then we streamed from different locations. And I think that's kind of the space that we're wanting to lean into. It's still this connecting, finding opportunities and money for artists, really supporting the artist community and giving them a platform to play on. But the Hyde Park Jazz Festival is the same as everyone else in this room. It's a very small organization made up of a few part-time people, and who's really trying to reach into their networks, our networks, and connect people and provide a much bigger platform than what our resources are.
Well, yeah. I'm very flattered that somebody brought up that maybe the Jazz Institute could be galvanizing influence in this way too. And I think that, that's the impetus behind our having this conversation tonight as well. And it's so great that we could go from Beverly with Orbert to Evanston with Steve and everybody in between. And, I think there are more dots in between that we can try to connect also. The idea of, all of us together going to DCASE and saying, what are you doing? We've got to really have some action here. Maybe that works.
Can I make one point about that?
Certainly.
The Hideout has taken a huge role in the national venue work and Save Our Stages. And, they were the ones who put together all the people who have venues in the city to, campaign, get legislation, get billions of dollars. And you look at that and you say, why is that the role of, the Hideout and all the venues, and not, why didn't DCASE take that role? And, that to me says so much about, people are sort of left on their own to, create out of whole cloth, a whole new paradigm. And, it is with very little resources. But I think it's a testimony to the passion all of us have felt towards arts presenting. Like, we went into this knowing this wasn't, the get rich quick lifestyle. And it's really because we love Ari Brown, we love Harrison Bankhead, we love all these artists that are older and part of Chicago. And if we weren't going to do it, then who is going to do it? So it came. I think it comes with a lot of love and a lot of dedication to our work.
I'm so sorry. You know, I think there are some things that we could at least try to envision moving forward collectively, that the Jazz Institute could help out with, and that DCASE definitely could help out with. And that is, if we're talking about a situation where we're unsure about the pandemic and its its effects throughout the summer, and we know that music is one of the most important things that citizens need to have a release valve to gather together safely outdoors. And we know that street festivals are a thing. I know that the Jazz Institute has sponsored, I forget what the program is called, but it goes out to several, you know, neighborhood locations throughout the summer.
Jazz City.
Jazz City, right?
Jazz City, exactly. It seems to me like a perfect time to try to expand Jazz City with city resources to as many neighborhoods as possible, and to basically create a Chicago tour for local musicians where, all right, here's your tour schedule. You know, once a week for the next 10 weeks, you're going to be in a neighborhood in Chicago or whatever number of neighborhoods. And it's free to the public, and it's ready to, and you just set up, they close off the street. Everybody's going to need something to do if the pandemic is still hitting. Musicians still need work. Musicians want to appear safely in front of people. You know, if I can get 80 people to just appear with no advertising whatsoever, just because I'm there every Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m, how much bigger would that be if suddenly a jazz group or a music group, you know, let's not even just limit it to jazz, but, you know, suddenly you've got every neighborhood in Chicago having an event that helps the spirit, that keeps musicians and technicians engaged, and just say, hey, you know what, in Chicago every Sunday afternoon, that way they don't have to worry about lights and the expense of lights. You can make all the amplification equipment as simple as possible, and we just do it. But that has to be organized. You got to get city permits and yada yada, whatever. But that's a way for us all to collaborate together right there, and we have enough time to plan it and get it to happen.
Well, I can't give away too much information, but the Institute does have programming that's moving in that direction for the spring. So that, for instance, well, I mean, it's not been announced yet. And I'll tell you that we're going to do a Latin Jazz Festival at Humboldt Park. It's going to be a drive-through concerts. Parking is going to be designated. The artists are going to perform will be the same performers both nights, I think. Cool. That's one. There's other Jazz City events that have been scheduled. I don't know the details of them. There's a Women of Jazz City coming up, I think next month in March. We're doing the Watercolors concert again at Navy Pier. So that is a outdoor, you know, free event. So we're thinking in those directions also, Kurt, the idea of having the musicians on the street, different neighborhoods, performing in front of recognizable neighborhood landmarks.
That would be cool. Have them perform in front of the clubs. Yeah, outdoors in front of that way people associate a location with the activity, or just choose 4 corners in the middle of a residential neighborhood and just set it up. Just make it as simple as that. You don't have to have a theme or anything. Look, everybody, music.
You will be called.
I'll be answering. Count me in, Dad. I want to.
You're there. Hey, I'm getting the bell here. I think we're going to have to wrap this up, but it's been a really productive and interesting conversation. And one of the things also I'll say that really brings the interactivity is the sincerity and the candor that panelists like you guys bring to these conversations. And that really makes it real. And I think that people who are watching pick up that we're really concerned about this. It's not a dilettantish thing. There's professionals who have a lot of passion for keeping this culture going in Chicago and worldwide, looking at those bigger issues and also finding ways to entertain using the new technologies, and that there are good things that are coming out of this. You know, you guys have improvised new ways of reaching audiences and performing for yourselves and with others. And it's really inspiring. And I want to thank you all for your parts in that. So Kurt Elling, Bryan Farina, Olivia Junell, Steve Rashid, Marguerite Horberg. Did I miss anybody? Yes, of course, Chris Anderson and Orbert Davis. So we're going to have you back for something, and maybe performances on the street, or maybe another conversation, or some thinking tank situation to try to get some of these projects together. Also thank Adriana Prieto, who hosted our Zoom concert here, and LaShawn Hardy, who's also been directing backstage, and Heather Ireland Robinson, and the Jazz Institute of Chicago. So thank you all. I'm Howard Mandel, and I'm pleased to have had any part in this conversation. And we'll continue the conversation too.
Thanks for doing this, Howard.
Thanks, Howard.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Really fun.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.